This podcast is part of the Listen Frederick Podcast Network. To learn more, visit listenfrederick.com.
The Fedora Files.
Hello and welcome to the Fedora Files. I am Gregory Fedoran. Welcome to November. Here we are. October's over, November's here, Christmas is right around the corner, New Year's going to be there. It's just flashing by. This year's just like zooming by, like crazy. So now that we're in November, the first thing that happens in November, you got a couple things here. You got the Day of the Dead, which is in Mexico is a big deal, November 1st, but it's also All Saints Day. And if you grew up Catholic, this was a very special day. I think it's it's considered a day of obligation. But it's All Saints Day, and I thought too. I was raised Catholic, so I thought it'd be fun to look up some of the more interesting patron saints, and I'm going to tell their stories. Now, these are pretty cool because they're just different than what you're expecting saints to be. So we're going to go in no particular order. I'm just going to go over about 5 of them, and we're going to start off with Saint Margaret of Antioch. Now, she was born into a pagan family, which that's not like a lot of times when we think pagan, we're thinking Wiccan or witches or whatever, but that's not really what it meant. This meant that they weren't Christian, Catholic, whatever, so they were just not of those ilk. Well, she converted to Christianity when she was a young girl. However, as she grew up, she was very beautiful. So much so that I think it's Oliverius, who was a Roman governor, was like, dude, she's beautiful. I want her to be my wife. Well, he was pagan, not Christian, and kind of a jerk, and she didn't want anything to do with him. So he had her thrown in prison, but not just thrown in prison, he tortured her in prison and was like trying to get her to be like, okay, I'll marry you. I guess, I mean, guys, don't be like Oliverius, don't be throwing girls in prison just to get a date. Bad idea. Well, anyway, as she was imprisoned, Satan came to her in the form of a dragon. And not only that, he ate her. The dragon ate her. But she was wearing a cross, and the cross gave Satan a really bad stomach ache, and he couldn't digest her. And she then used the cross to cut herself free and out of the belly of the beast. Okay, she took this saint is a she's awesome. She's like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but a saint. And Saint Margaret. So she cut herself out of the dragon. And because of this, she is now the patron saint of pregnant women, of the sick, and of peasants, because she's a peasant girl that the governor wanted, she couldn't have. And at one point, she was the most popular saint in medieval England. So there you have it. That was Saint Margaret. Just killing dragons from the inside. That's, to me, that's crazy. Anyway, so let's move on. The next saint we're going to look at is Saint Denis or Denis of Paris. And he lived in about the 3rd century, and he went around and he was converting people throughout France. He was also known as the first bishop of the country of France and its first apostle. Now, he grew the base of Christianity, and this infuriated the officials of that area because they were not Christian. They didn't like that. And so he was imprisoned, and he was going to be executed. This is where things get crazy. While he was preaching, he was beheaded. They cut his head right off. But he kept on preaching, according to the legend. The reality, he and some more of his clergy, they were all beheaded on the highest hills of Paris. and their bodies were then taken from there, and they were buried, and there's a chapel buried over his tomb. But let's think this through. Dude was beheaded and kept on talking, and it's considered a miracle. Did it happen? I don't know. I wasn't there, but that's the story. And how freaky would that be if, you know, a headless man just kept talking about, his beliefs? How wild, you know, that is pretty impressive, you know, because he's got severed vocal cords and he's still going. It's like, man, hopefully he was interesting, because wouldn't it be awful if he was like super monotone? And so they beheaded him and he's still like, and they're like, oh my gosh, that didn't even stop him. What if they beheaded him not because of what he was saying, but how he was saying it? He was just really boring. I probably shouldn't say stuff like that. He's a saint. Don't say bad things about saints. Anyway, so let's move on. The next one is Saint Simeon. Now, to get away from the constant barrage of prayer requests, Saint Simeon found a pillar with a platform at the top, and it was like 6 feet tall. And this didn't help him get away from the people. He thought a 6 foot thing would. I don't know why. But as the story goes, he moved on to one that was 50 feet tall. He just wanted to get away from these people who were just bugging him for prayer requests. And he lived there for 47 years. So now, I mean, this is a story. His followers increased in numbers. So it is believed a wall was built so the monk could spend time in prayer. Now, he just wanted to get away from people. And so it's interesting that dude wanted to be left alone, and somehow he became a saint for this. Despite being exposed to the elements, he remained steadfast until his death. He's considered the pillar hermit and converted many to Christianity, influenced the Roman Emperor Leo I to soften his stance on Christianity. Now, here I don't know what he's the patron saint of, but I find it magnificent that this guy just wanted to be left alone. And his desire to be left alone converted people. Probably people who were like, man, I want to be left alone. Man, that guy built a 50-foot pillar. That's one way to do it. I don't know why he didn't like build a roof and why he stayed up there, for 47 years. I mean, oh my gosh, that's horrible. 47 years on a pillar just to get people to leave you alone. Hey, and then you become a saint. Look at that. The next guy we got is Saint Joseph. Now, he was Saint Joseph of Cupertino. I hope I'm saying that right. Probably not. Now, people saw Saint Joseph rise from the ground while he was conducting mass and praying. So the dude levitated. This is the story. Wasn't there, but this is what they say had happened. So one time he was in such communion with God, he levitated in front of the Pope. Imagine the Pope, who is the head of the church, he's not getting to levitate, but St. Joseph, he gets to levitate. The word of this phenomenon spread, and a crowd would develop during public processions. Every time he would mention the name Jesus, he'd be lifted up from the ground, and a complete joy would overtake him. Although St. Joseph tried to be discreet, he could not avoid being sought out by the people. He was canonized by Pope Clement the 13th in 1767. But like that would bring people to church, man, levitating. I would go and watch a priest levitate. That would be phenomenal, magnificent. That would just be one of the coolest things. Like that's another cool saint. So next we got just a two more, I think. Or no, we just have one more. Holy cow. We've like zoomed right through this. And I will probably butcher this guy's name. It's Saint, it's actually a girl, sorry. Saint Scholastica. Saint Scholastica. And when I guess is the patron saint of none, and convulsive children. I don't know what that would even mean. That's a big word for me. Anyway, you would also call on Saint Scholastica when there's a rainstorm. Let's find out. The reason is the sister of Saint Benedict wanted to keep her brother so that they could talk, but he wanted to go home and pray at the monastery. Like a good sister, she prayed that the Lord would keep her twin there to chat. And that's when a storm came, brewed, and prevented him from going to the abbey, thus answering her prayers. So she wanted her brother to hang out, so she said, God, make it rain. And he made it rain. And that's another I probably, Anyway, so St. Benedict later had a dream of his sister going to heaven, and 3 days later she passed away. Her body was taken to his monastery, and it was laid on a tomb. Saint Scholastica, as we said, is the patron saint of nun and convulsive children, and apparently the patron saint of sisters who want their brothers to hang out with them. So there you have. Those are some 5 saints that you can check out and look into. I find them fascinating. I like these stories. There's other saints out there that have some pretty cool stories behind them and legends. And I love folklore and stories and lore and mythology. And did these things happen? I don't know. I wasn't there. But I mean, it's kind of like same thing. Aliens, dude, aliens come. I don't know. Maybe. And I think it's kind of the same thing. It's like, whether or not you believe in the lore of Bigfoot and stuff or aliens or these saints, it takes a bit of faith no matter what direction you go with it. But I find these stories fascinating. And again, it's stories I think that need to be cherished because it's part of our human condition that we had these things and we had these holy people who did some, no doubtly, they did some amazing stuff to the point that people recognized them and wanted more about them. And maybe they added to the lore by adding some phenomenal feats to them. But, I mean, who's to blame for that? Nobody. It just makes them interesting people and makes some people we don't want to forget because, they have cool stories. I hope someday if someone's telling stories about me, maybe I get eaten by a dragon and I cut my way out with a cross like St. Margaret. I think that is probably my favorite saint, just the coolness of her to get out of that situation. She wasn't just a pretty face, despite what Oliberius thought. She's a warrior, man, cutting her way out of a dragon. I mean, wow. Seriously, that's the kind of girl you want. Just make sure you're on the same page, religiously, because she would rather be eaten by a dragon or tortured than marry someone she, didn't have the same faith with. So there you have it. So welcome to November. We got more stuff coming. We got cool stuff. I got some guests coming on. I'm going to be on some other people's podcasts, and I'll let you know when that is. And I'll be talking about, and I got a new book that I'm going to tell you about next week. So remember, as always, stay safe and keep searching.
The Fedora Files.
Check out FedoraCRT.com today.